All right, let's dive right into a definitive text of ancient drama, one that completely dissects the socio-economic anxieties of the Roman Republic. We're looking at Titus Macius Plautus's Mercator. Now, you might initially read this as just a simple, straightforward translation of Philemon's Greek original, but it is so much more than that. Plautus takes these core mercantile themes, profit, foreign trade, overseas commercial success, and aggressively crashes them into the traditional Roman domestic sphere. It's absolutely brilliant. He takes the literal, physical merchandise of our young protagonist Chirinus's voyage and transforms it into the central, highly volatile catalyst for family friction. We're going to see exactly how this play uses structural mechanics and incredibly messy character dynamics to expose the deep-seated cracks within the elite Roman household. It's a masterclass in using comedic storytelling as a highly sophisticated dramaturgical lens.
Here's the roadmap for our explainer today. We're going to move sequentially through this rigorous academic progression, starting with the introduction and thematic thesis. Then we'll hit the historical and cultural context, dive into literary composition and style, unpack the ethical and philosophical framework, map out the dialectical progression, and finally wrap up with transmission and enduring legacy.
Section 1, Introduction and Thematic Thesis. To really understand the Mercator, we have to establish its genre. It operates as a fabula palliata. Simply put, this was a massive, defining trend in Latin comedy where a Greek source text was strictly adapted for the Roman stage. Think of it like a cultural reboot. But Plautus doesn't just casually translate the words, he masterfully translates the central anxieties of his era. By bringing a purchased foreign lover, the literal merchandise, into the incredibly rigid structure of a traditional Roman household, the play dramatizes a major cultural collision. It's the clash between expansive new commercialism and conservative old-school Roman social rules. Plautus takes an economic transaction and turns it into an immediate catalyst for absolute family chaos, exploring those profound socio-economic anxieties right before the audience's eyes.
Section 2, Historical and Cultural Context. To fully grasp what Plautus is doing here, we have to map out the historical evolution and the geopolitical shift of comedic forms in antiquity. Think of it like an evolution of theatrical satire. Back in the classical era, middle comedy was heavily driven by personal, deeply specific political attacks. But as we move into the Hellenistic era, the focus fundamentally shifts. We see the rise of the Greek nea komodia, that's new comedy, which pivots to the satire of general social types rather than specific politicians. Plautus inherits this exact framework, but he weaponizes it for the socio-political environment of his time. He masterfully utilizes this satire of general types to surgically critique the incredibly rigid societal structures of the Roman Republic, moving away from high politics to drill down into the explosive potential of everyday domestic frictions.
Section 3, Literary Composition and Style. Now, let's analyze the actual narrative devices at play, because Plautus uses the physical stage itself to dial up the tension. He gives us the scenography of proximity, two neighboring houses creating a total pressure cooker, physically manifesting internal familial friction upon the stage. On the left, we have the House of Dimipho, which serves as the primary battleground for this fierce paternal-filial rivalry. Right next door is the House of Lysimachus, which functions as a brilliant structural device to escalate the absurdity of the concealed romance. Because these houses are practically on top of each other, the drama is inescapable. The physical closeness mirrors the suffocating nature of Roman social surveillance, demonstrating how quickly the ethical contamination of one household instantly infects the community next door.
Section 4, Ethical and Philosophical Framework.
So let's examine the ethical decay sitting right at the center of this play, specifically the total collapse of traditional Roman domestic authority. In the Republic, the pater-familias was the absolute, unquestioned center of moral and legal power in the home. But Plautus gives us Dimipho, a father who entirely subverts this role, driven purely by base desires and, frankly, stunning generational hypocrisy. Instead of fulfilling his familial duty and maintaining decorum, Dimipho violently competes with his own son over a purchased woman. This is absolutely crucial to understand. This isn't just a wacky sitcom misunderstanding. It's a ruthless critique of a volatile rivalry where the supposed moral authority abandons his foundational duties. He's abusing his systemic power for personal infatuation, and in doing so, he completely destroys the traditional ethical framework he's supposed to be guarding.
This brings us to the profound dramatic irony of the maidservant lie. To hide this forbidden romance, right under the patriarch's nose, the younger generation pretends the woman is simply a new maid for the mother.
It's a genius narrative move because it actively weaponizes traditional Roman domestic expectations against the elder generation's scrutiny. They use the strict expected rules of household labor to completely blindside the father, masking a prohibited romance in plain sight. The very rules designed to maintain domestic order are manipulated to bypass it, proving just how easily the supposedly authoritative older generation can be played in their own home. It's a perfect illustration of structural subversion.
Section 5. Dialectical progression.
Let's map out the archetypal characters whose internal psychological motivations continuously drive this dialectic of deception and discovery. First, we have Chirinus, the young protagonist or adolescens. His financial acumen as a merchant is totally undermined by the domestic drama he brings home. Opposing him is his father Dimopho, playing the senex amans, the predatory, lustful father who breaks all the rules of generational respect. Pulling the strings is Acontia, the service colladus or clever slave, who plays a vital role as the primary architect of the deception. And finally, Passacompsa, the meretrix, whose mere physical presence in the house is the absolute trigger for all this conflict. The whole play is just these highly defined archetypes structurally colliding over power, desire, and authority.
Watch how systematically the central conflict escalates through these mechanics. Step 1. Chairness returns, bringing a foreign element home. Step 2. Aconthio spins the maidservant lie to structurally cover it up. Step 3. Dimopho's sudden infatuation shatters that deception completely. And finally, Step 4. They try to hide Passacompsa at Lysimachus's house, dragging the neighbors into the mess. Every single structural choice here massively amplifies the socio-familial strain placed on these neighboring households. It shows how one little breach in honesty, combined with the hypocrisy of the man in charge, mathematically guarantees a total dialectical breakdown of the community.
Section 6. Transmission and enduring legacy.
Now, structurally, the entire resolution of this domestic chaos hinges on a concept called the agnato. In ancient traumatic theory, the agnato is that critical, explosive moment of discovery, the sudden transition from complete ignorance to undeniable truth. It's the engine that ultimately facilitates the reunion of the young lovers. Here, the character Eutychus steps in as the final moral arbiter. He's the one who tracks down the truth and systematically dismantles this massive, suffocating web of lies. And when that happens, the agnato does its job perfectly. It brutally exposes Dimopho's sheer lack of restraint. It proves that the patriarch's authority was completely hollow, acting as a sharp moral censure of the elder generation.
Following this crucial moment of discovery, the play delivers a brutal public shaming of the father. But Eutychus doesn't just scold Dimopho. This sharp moral censure represents a broader, devastating comedic satire on the systemic impropriety of the senex class as a whole. By forcefully condemning the father's predatory behavior as a severe breach of decency, the play definitively hands the victory and the moral high ground back to the younger generation. It actively restores proper generational decorum by legally and socially validating the son's rights squarely over the father's gross impropriety, putting the social order back exactly where it belongs.
Which leaves us with a final, highly provocative inquiry to consider. By the end of the text, domestic order is certainly restored. But is this comedic resolution truly validate the adolescents? Or by requiring such an elaborate, deeply absurd web of lies just to enforce basic decency, did Plautus actually expose the inescapable, enduring hypocrisy built right into the Roman paterfamilias? It forces us to reconsider the enduring stability of Roman social hierarchies depicted on the ancient stage. It challenges you to ask whether the power structures of the Republic were inherently stable or perpetually vulnerable to the corruptions of the very men appointed to guard them. It's a structural critique that genuinely echoes through the history of literature.